In my 74 years, I finally realized that loneliness is not such a terrible state, especially when you compare it to being forced to socialize with people who can't stand you. My son Ripley and his fiancée Daisy are just such people. I'm sitting in my favorite chair by the window, sipping tea from a china cup with a crack in it. That crack was the day my husband Bertram died. I dropped the cup then, but it didn't break. It just cracked like my heart. Now, every time I put it to my lips, I think of him. Ridiculous sentimentality for a woman my son calls callous. My apartment in Livingston isn't too big, but it's cozy. After selling the family home, the same one where Ripley grew up, I chose a place closer to the city center. I love watching life from my window. People rushing to work, coming home, someone walking their dog, someone arguing loudly on the phone. I was once part of this maelstrom myself, but now I am an outside observer. For 32 years, I worked as an anchorwoman for a local TV station. First, I hosted the weather forecast, then the morning show, and for the last 15 years, the authors program, Conversations with Lillian. I interviewed local celebrities, politicians, businessmen. I never went out of my way to say what I thought. The viewers appreciated it, but the station management didn't always. Lillian, could you be nicer to the mayor? My producer Neil would often ask me after a tough interview. Gentle? I asked him again. This is the third time he's promised to fix the roads in the northern neighborhood. People there live in knee-deep mud every spring. What the hell's gentler? Bertram always laughed at my integrity. My uncompromising Lily, he'd say, kissing me on the top of my head. We lived together for 46 years. He was an engineer for an airline, designing some incredibly complex systems, but he couldn't figure out the TV settings. When I would go on the air, he would sit in front of the screen and watch without stopping. I want to see my wife telling off another crook, he'd explain to the neighbors. 3 years ago, Bertram left, quietly, in his sleep. A heart attack. I woke up in the morning and realized he was no longer breathing. That day, something in me snapped, perhaps the last barrier that kept me straight. Ripley came to the funeral with Daisy. That was when I first saw her, a slender blonde with impeccable manicures and a smile that never reached her eyes. "Mom," Ripley said after the ceremony, "maybe you should move closer to us." I looked at Daisy. Her eyes widened with horror, though her smile didn't waver. "No, thank you," I replied. "I'll stay here." From then on, my sister-in-law demonstrated every time I met her how much my existence annoyed her. It started with little things, criticizing my clothes. "Lillian, this color is so old. My house, it's so retro in here. My habits, do you really have to laugh so loud?" Ripley, meanwhile, had turned into a man I barely recognized. My son, who once could argue with me for hours about politics, literature, everything in the world, now just nodded at Daisy's words. As soon as I started to say something interesting, she'd interrupt me. "Honey, we have to go. We've got so much to do." And he'd leave, smiling guiltily. I was invited to dinner with them no more than once every 2 or 3 months, and each time I felt unwelcome. The last time we met was 2 months ago, on Ripley's birthday. Daisy had thrown a party at a fancy restaurant, inviting a bunch of her friends and coworkers. I sat at a long table, feeling invisible. No one paid any attention to me, except the waiter, who kept pouring my wine. "Are you Ripley's mother?" My neighbor on the right asked me somewhere between the salad and the hot meal. "Yes," I answered. "Strange," he muttered. "He never told me about you." The wine hit my head, and I couldn't help myself. "I've never heard of you. Who are you?" "I'm his boss," the man said proudly. "Oh, that's it," I said. "The one who pays his employees half as much as they deserve?" There was an awkward pause. Daisy, who was sitting across from me, turned pale. Ripley looked like he wanted to fall through the ground. "Mom," he hissed, "please." I got up from the table. "I'm going to powder my nose," I announced and headed for the ladies' room. Daisy caught up with me in the hallway. "Lillian," she said through gritted teeth, "do you realize you've just ruined my fiancé's career?" "Your fiancé?" I interjected. "He's my son, and I'm worried about him. This man is exploiting him." "Oh my God," Daisy rolled her eyes. "You're unbearable. Why are you even here?" "I was invited to my son's birthday party," I reminded her. "Yes, and that was a mistake," she said, and walked away. Ripley had only called me a couple of times since then, and that was to make sure I was alive. The conversations have been short and strained. This morning I did the usual things: watered the flowers on the windowsill, looked at the newspaper. Yes, I still prefer paper newspapers, and did some light exercise. Bertram insisted that I keep fit, and I continued to do so in his memory. At 12:30, the phone rang. My son's name popped up on the screen. I didn't hurry to answer it. Let him wait. He's not a little boy. On the fifth ring, I picked up the phone. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Mom, hi." Ripley's voice sounded tense. "How are you?" "I'm fine," I answered. "What's wrong?" "What makes you think something's wrong?" There was nervousness in his voice. "Because you call me in the middle of the day on Thursday. Usually you only remember I exist on Sundays, and not every week." He sighed. "Mom, come on. I just wanted to take you to lunch. We need to talk." "About what?" I asked. "When we meet," he cut me off. "It's important. Will Daisy be there too?" "Yes," he said after a pause. "That goes for her too." I paused, thinking about the situation. On the one hand, I didn't want to waste time with another tense meeting. On the other hand, curiosity had always been my weakness. "Okay," I agreed. "When and where?" 7-night tonight, Blue Lobster. I made a reservation." The Blue Lobster is an expensive restaurant in the center of town. Ripley's never taken me there before. "What are we celebrating?" I asked. "Mom, please, just come." His voice sounded tired. Try not to be late." He disconnected, and I sat there with the phone in my hand, wondering what that could mean. Usually when Ripley gets this nervous, Daisy's behind it. She's up to something, and he follows her instructions like an obedient boy. I walked over to the closet and opened the doors. What to wear? If this was a really important conversation, I should look the part. I pulled out the navy blue dress I'd worn for my last interview before I retired. It still fit me well. I still had my figure, despite my age. Bertram always said I looked younger than my years. "That's because I don't let myself relax," I replied. I put the dress on the bed and wondered, why did Ripley and Daisy need this meeting? Maybe they had decided to move, or were they in trouble and needed money? Bertram had left us a good bit of savings, and I knew Daisy was aware of that. Or maybe they were having a baby. The thought made me smile. Despite our differences, I would like to be a grandmother. Although, knowing Daisy, it was unlikely she would allow me to be actively involved in the life of a grandson or granddaughter. I sighed and headed for the bathroom. I needed to get ready for this mystery dinner. Whatever Ripley and his fiancée were up to, I had to look impeccable. No one can say Lillian Shinstone went down without a fight. The Blue Lobster restaurant greeted me with dim lighting and soft music. I arrived at 7 sharp, as Ripley had requested, not because I always obey my son, but because punctuality is my thing. In 32 years of television, I've never been late for a broadcast. Even when Ripley had chickenpox and he was only 6 years old, I managed to find a neighbor to babysit him and get to the studio on time. The maitre d' escorted me to a table by the window. Ripley and Daisy were already waiting. My son rose to kiss me on the cheek, a dry, formal kiss. Daisy only nodded without getting up. Her blonde hair was arranged in a flawless style, and a fake smile played across her face that didn't affect her eyes. "You look beautiful, Mom," Ripley said, helping me sit up. "Thank you, darling. I tried," I replied, looking them both over carefully. They seemed tense. "So, what was important you wanted to talk about?" Ripley looked at Daisy. It was as if they were silently deciding who would start the conversation. Finally, Daisy nodded slightly, and Ripley cleared his throat. "Mum, we've got news," he said with a strained smile. "Daisy and I have set a date for the wedding." I acted surprised, though what surprise could there be? They'd been engaged for 2 years. "Congratulations! When will this joyous occasion take place?" "In 3 weeks," Daisy interjected, clearly proud of herself. "We've been looking for the perfect place for a long time, and we've finally found it." 3 weeks? That's quite a rush for a perfectionist like Daisy. I raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. A waiter came to our table. Ripley ordered a bottle of expensive champagne, apparently to sweeten the pill. I would have preferred a scotch, but I didn't argue. "And where would the ceremony be held?" I asked when the waiter left. "Sunset Beach," Ripley said enthusiastically. "Remember when we used to go there when I was a kid?" Of course I remembered. Sunset Beach was about an hour's drive from Livingston. Bertram and I and little Ripley spent almost every weekend there during the summer months. Bertram taught his son to build sandcastles, and I took pictures of the two of them, Sandy and Happy. "A fine choice," I nodded. "Will the ceremony be in the afternoon or at sunset?" "Sunset," Daisy said, stepping forward. "The sun will be setting right behind us when we say our vows. We hired the best photographer in town." The waiter returned with champagne. Ripley poured it into glasses, and we clinked glasses to our future wedding. I took a sip. The champagne was fine, but for some reason I felt a lump in my throat. "How many guests are you planning to invite?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Ripley looked at Daisy again. She nodded faintly. "You see, Mom?" He twirled his glass nervously in his hands. "It's going to be a private ceremony, only the closest people." "I see." I sipped more champagne. "And who are the closest people?" "Daisy's parents, of course," Ripley began to list. "Her sister Haley and her husband and kids. My cousin Avery and his wife. Aunt Beatrice." "Aunt Beatrice?" I interrupted. "The one who got drunk last Christmas and tried to sing every Edith Piaf song in a row?" Daisy pressed her lips together. "She's Ripley's father's sister, and we think it's right to invite her." "And there'll be Uncle Hunter and Aunt Prue," Ripley continued, avoiding my gaze. "A few of my colleagues, a couple of Daisy's friends." I listened in silence as he listed the guests. The list was not so small, about 30 people. Slowly, I began to realize where this conversation was going. "What's the catch, Ripley?" I asked him bluntly when he'd finished. "Why all this conversation? Just send me an invitation, and I'll show up at the beach at the appointed time." Ripley turned pale. Daisy straightened in her chair as if she'd swallowed a shotgun. "Mother?" Ripley lowered his eyes, studying the tablecloth. "We wanted to tell you in person. You see, this is going to be a very special day." "Lillian," Daisy intervened sharply, apparently tired of his mumblings. "The wedding is a very important event for us. We want it to be perfect." I looked her straight in the eye. "Am I somehow interfering with that perfection?" "Not that you will," Daisy smiled sympathetically. "We're just worried that you'll be uncomfortable." "Me?" I grinned. "Since when do you care about my comfort, dear?" Ripley coughed. "Mom, do you remember my birthday and the conversation with my boss?" "Oh, that's it." I leaned back in my chair and sipped more champagne. "You mean the moment I pointed out to that pompous turkey that he was underpaying his employees? By the way, how are you doing at work after that?" "Fine," Ripley said. But that's not the point. It's just that you say what you think without thinking about the consequences. So I'm telling the truth, I translated. And that's the problem? The problem is, Daisy said, is that we're going to have powerful people at our wedding. Ripley's parents. I mean, my parents have connections in the business community, and we don't want anything to happen that's awkward. I slowly set my glass down on the table. Everything was finally falling into place. You're not inviting me to the wedding, I said, looking directly at my son. That's what this whole conversation was about. Ripley jerked as if I'd hit him. Mom, we didn't say that. We didn't, but we implied it. I turned to Daisy. Didn't we? She held my gaze. We think it's best for everyone. For everyone? I asked her again. Or for you? Look, Lillian, Daisy lowered her voice. I know you think I'm turning Ripley against you, but I'm not. I just want our day to be special, without any unnecessary tension. The extra tension is me. I nodded. How convenient. Ripley looked unhappy. Mom, please understand. Oh, I understand perfectly well. I interrupted. Your fiancé is afraid I'll say the wrong thing to her precious parents or their important friends, and you're indulging her, as always. It's not just her decision, Ripley objected, but without much conviction. I looked at my son, the same boy who had once defended the weak at school fearlessly, who hadn't been afraid to speak his mind, even if it differed from the majority. What happened to him? So you invited drunk Aunt Beatrice to your wedding, Avery's cousin who once tried to sell you insurance on your own car, and Aunt Prue who still gives you reindeer sweaters for your birthday as a kid. But your mother is too awkward for this company. Daisy rolled her eyes. Lillian, don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic, dear, I replied calmly. I'm just summarizing our conversation. Ripley tried to save the situation. Mom, we'll have a family dinner after the honeymoon. Just the three of us, I promise. How sweet of you. I finished my champagne and put the empty glass on the table. You know, Ripley, your father always said that there's nothing more important than family. Family is those who accept you for who you are, he used to say. I wonder what he would say now. Ripley turned even paler. Leave Dad out of this. Why not? I asked. He'd be horrified to hear that his son was refusing to invite his own mother to the wedding. We're not refusing, Daisy interjected. We're just explaining why it might not be the best idea. Then tell me straight. I looked her in the eye. Say you don't want me at your wedding. Stop hiding behind awkwardness and comfort. Be honest, at least for now. Daisy didn't look away. Okay, Lillian, I don't want you at our wedding. I'm afraid you'll ruin the most important day of my life with your inappropriate comments and criticism. Fair enough? Ripley looked as if he'd been kicked in the butt. Daisy, he whispered, don't. It's all right, son. I patted his arm. We finally heard the truth. I appreciate the honesty. I got up from the table and picked up my purse. Well, I won't take up any more of your time. I'm sure you have a lot of wedding planning to do. Mom, wait. Ripley stood up too. Don't go like that. How am I supposed to leave? I asked. With a blessing? I'm sorry, darling, but I'm not a saint. I'm just an ordinary mother who loves her son, and who is in a lot of pain right now. Daisy got up too. Lillian, don't make a tragedy of it. It's just a wedding. No, darling. I looked at her with pity. It's not just a wedding. This is the moment my son chose you over his family, and I hope you're worth it. I turned and headed for the exit without looking back. Ripley shouted something after me, but I didn't listen. The only thing I needed right now was to get away from both of them. I took a deep breath of the cool evening air as I stepped outside. My eyes stung from unshed tears, but I wouldn't let myself cry. At least not here, not now. I walked a few blocks before catching a cab. The driver tried to strike up a conversation, but quickly realized I wasn't in the mood and left me alone. Looking out the window at the city lights floating by, I thought about how Ripley and I had gotten to this point. When had my loving, caring boy turned into this gutless man willing to give up his own mother for his fiance's peace of mind? At home, the first thing I did was throw off my shoes and pour myself a scotch. A good swig burned my throat and dulled the pain a little. I sank into my favorite chair and stared out the window at the darkness. My phone rang several times. Ripley's, of course. I didn't answer it. What else could he have said? "I'm sorry we don't want you at our wedding. I'm sorry my fiance thinks you're a burden." An hour later, when the calls stopped, I dialed another number. Tabitha Grayson had been my best friend since high school. We'd started out on TV together, only she'd gone into producing and I'd stayed on screen. Tabitha was retired now, like me, but still had all her connections in the media world. "Lily?" Her voice sounded surprised. "Are you okay? It's almost 11. "I'm fine," I lied. "I just wanted to chat." "You're lying," she determined instantly. "I can hear it in your voice. What's wrong?" And then I told her everything: the meeting at the restaurant, the wedding on the beach, how Daisy and Ripley had politely, and then not so politely, explained that I was too awkward for their perfect day. "Bastards," Tabitha summarized when I was done. "I'm sorry, Lily, but your son acted like a coward." "I know," I sighed. "But what can I do? He's a grown man. It's his choice." "His choice to be a puppet of that blonde upstart?" Tabitha snorted. "Bertram would roll over in his grave." The mention of her husband brought pain again. He could always find the right words to comfort me. Without him, I felt lost. "It just hurts, Tubbs," I admitted. "All these relatives who see Ripley once every 5 years are invited and I'm not." "So what are you going to do?" Tabitha asked. "Are you going to sit at home and feel sorry for yourself? What else? Show up uninvited to the wedding?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You know," Tabitha said slowly, "that's not such a bad idea." "What?" I almost choked on my scotch. "Are you out of your mind?" "Think about it, Lily," she said, the familiar tone of voice that Tabitha used to use when she was coming up with a crazy idea for a TV show. "Your son and his fiancée are having a beach wedding at sunset. They're afraid you'll do something embarrassing. So why not justify their fears? What do you suggest? Show up in a white dress and make a scene?" "No," Tabitha hummed. "I'm suggesting something more creative. Remember Oliver Knox, our old cameraman?" "Of course I do. He makes social media videos now. Very successful ones, by the way. He also has a drone with a camera." I was starting to see where she was going with this. "Tabs, you're not suggesting—" "That's right, honey. If you're not invited to the wedding, have your own. Right there on Sunset Beach. Just on the other side of the beach." "That's crazy." I shook my head, even though Tabitha couldn't see it. "I'm 74 years old, Tabs. I can't just—" "Lily," she interrupted, "when has your age ever stopped you from doing anything? You've always been a rebel. Remember when you told off that senator on live TV for his sexist remarks? You were also told then that you were making your job awkward." I smiled involuntarily, remembering that incident. The phones in the studio were ringing off the hook for days. Half of the audience demanded that I be fired. The other half demanded that I be promoted. It was a long time ago, I sighed, and I was younger, but no less stubborn, Tabitha countered. "Look, Lily, your son and that, Daisy thinks they can just push you aside. Show them that Lillian Shanestone isn't so easily written off." I sipped more scotch, mulling over her words. This really was crazy, but the more I thought about it, the more appealing the idea seemed. "What exactly are you suggesting?" I finally asked. Tabitha laughed softly. Come to my place tomorrow. We'll talk about it. And call Oliver. I'm sure he'd love the opportunity to work with the legendary Lillian Shanestone again. When I hung up, I was relieved. Maybe Tabitha was right. Maybe I shouldn't take this blow quietly. After all, I've always taught Ripley to stand up for himself. Maybe it's time to remind him who he inherited his once strong character from. I woke up the next morning with a heavy head and a strange sense of determination. Tabitha's idea seemed crazy in the light of day, but something inside me refused to give up without a fight. Maybe I was too old for revenge, but definitely not old enough to let others decide where I should be and what I should do. Tabitha lived 15 minutes away from me, in a cozy house with a garden she adored. She had set up a table on the veranda for my arrival, tea, fresh croissants, and a notebook ready to write down our crazy plan. "You look lousy," Tabitha said instead of greeting me. "Thanks, honey. You always know how to lighten the mood." I sat down at the table and reached for the kettle. "Scotch for the night?" Tabitha squinted at me. "A little," I admitted, "but my head's working fine." "Good, because we have a lot of planning to do." She opened her notebook. "I've already contacted Oliver. I almost choked on my tea." "Already? We just talked about this yesterday." "I know you, Lily. If you don't push, you start to hesitate." "Oliver's thrilled with the idea. Said he missed our adventures." Oliver Knox was our TV cameraman for almost 20 years. An ex-military photographer, he had an incredible eye for a shot and absolute fearlessness. He and I often went on the most risky shoots. During floods, on the roof of an unfinished skyscraper, in the tent camp of protesters. Bertram was jokingly jealous of me and Oliver, although there was never anything but professional respect and friendship between us. "And what did he say?" I asked, spreading jam on a croissant. "That he has a drone with a high-definition camera and he can capture everything from the air. He also knows a couple of guys who can help with ground photography." Tabitha made a note in her notebook. "Now we need to decide the most important thing, the concept. What exactly are we going to do on that beach?" I wondered, looking at Tabitha's garden. The roses had already bloomed, but the dahlias and asters were in full bloom. "Remember our special on non-traditional weddings?" I asked. "There was a couple who got married in the surf in the middle of the ocean." "Oh, yeah," Tabitha nodded. "It was spectacular, but a little too extreme for us. You're 74, Lily. You don't know how to surf." "Thanks for reminding me." I rolled my eyes. I was thinking of something more symbolic. Not a real wedding, but a performance art piece. Something that would say, "I can be a part of this day too, whether you want me to or not." Tabitha tapped her pencil against her lips. "How about a wedding to life? You know, that new trend where people marry themselves to emphasize self-sufficiency and self-love." I snorted. "Too pretentious. I want to laugh at the situation, not look like a pathetic and lonely old woman." "Then how about—" We went through a dozen ideas, from the ridiculous to the absurd, until we came up with one that silenced us both for a second. "A wedding with the sea," I said slowly, "like in those ancient seaside legends where women married the ocean to keep their fishermen husbands safe." "That's perfect." Tabitha smiled broadly. "Symbolic, beautiful, and eccentric enough to attract attention. Plus, we can use the color blue for your outfit. It's always suited you." We started writing down the details: music, something classical with a hint of modernity; scenery, minimal, nature itself is beautiful; outfit, something flowing with a nautical theme. "We're going to need help," Tabitha remarked. "I'll call Wendy. She's a freelance stylist right now. She can help with your look." Wendy Pierce was a makeup artist on our channel, a real brush wizard who could turn anyone into a movie star. "And for music," Tabitha continued, "I have a contact for this young cellist, Nia. She plays classical music with a modern twist, and we did a story on her last year. We'll have to find out the exact time of Ripley and Daisy's ceremony. I wrote it down in my notebook. We should be there a little early so we have time to get ready. Tabitha raised an eyebrow. And how are you going to find out? Are you going to call your son and ask? No, I'm going to call Aunt Prue. She loves sharing secrets, especially if she thinks she's doing it in secret from others. Genius, Tabitha laughed. And about the location. We need to check out the beach beforehand, find the perfect spot. Close enough to be seen, but not so close that we'll be disturbed. Oliver can do that, I suggested. He was always good at picking out locations. We spent the afternoon discussing details and calling potential helpers. By evening, we had a clear plan and a team of enthusiastic people ready to help with our venture. Wendy agreed to handle my image. Nia promised to play the cello, and 3 other former colleagues volunteered to help with the organization. When I got home, I had 3 messages from Ripley on my answering machine. The first apologized for last night, the second begged me to call back, and the third said he was worried about my condition. I didn't call back. Instead, I dialed Aunt Prue. Lillian, darling, she exclaimed after the first ring, as if she'd been expecting my call. How are you? I heard about the situation. What kind of situation, Aunt Prue? I asked innocently. Well, the wedding. Ripley called me last night very upset, she said with genuine sympathy in her voice. I told him how awful it was not inviting his own mother. So, Ripley's calling the family to explain her decision. Interesting. Thank you, Aunt Prue. I appreciate your support. I paused. Did you get the invitation yet? Oh, yes. Her voice became more animated. It's a beautiful card with a starfish on it. The ceremony is at 5 o'clock in the evening, at sunset. Very romantic. Indeed, I agreed. Which part of the beach is it on? Sunset is pretty big. Aunt Prue enthusiastically shared all the details. The ceremony would take place on the south end of the beach, where there was a small natural cove. After the ceremony, a buffet right on the beach, and then dinner at the surf restaurant nearby. I'm so sorry you won't be there, she sighed at the end. It's not right. Don't worry, Aunt Prue. I smiled even though she couldn't see it. Everything's gonna be okay. Oliver called the next day to let me know that he had explored the beach with his drone. He'd found the perfect spot, a rocky ledge at the north end, about 300 meters from where Ripley and Daisy's wedding was taking place. It had a great view of the ocean, and the sunset was to be magnificent. The next 2 weeks passed in feverish preparations. Wendy found me a stunning navy-colored dress, flowing and elegant, with silver flecks that resembled reflections on the water. She also created a special makeup and hairstyle for me that made me look like a sea goddess without going beyond good taste. Nia picked the perfect music, classical tunes with modern infusions that she was going to play on the cello. And our former sound engineer Martin promised to provide good sound even outdoors. Tabitha took care of the set, a few simple but effective elements that could be quickly set up on the beach. Long translucent fabrics to flutter in the wind, a few strategically placed torches, and bouquets of seaweed and sea flowers. The wedding day came unexpectedly quickly. I woke up at first light, feeling a strange mixture of nervousness and anticipation. Tabitha and I had agreed to meet at her house at 1 o'clock in the afternoon to begin preparations. Wendy was to arrive there as well with her dress and makeup. While I was eating breakfast, the phone rang. Ripley. I hesitated, but I answered it. Yes? Mom? His voice sounded tired. I've called you 100 times in the last 2 weeks. I've been busy, I answered. I have my own life, you know. Look, he took a deep breath. I wanted to apologize for the other night at the restaurant. Daisy and I didn't plan it that way. How did you plan it? I asked. Send me a polite letter explaining why I'm persona non grata at my own son's wedding? He paused. I still want you to come to the family dinner after the honeymoon. How nice, I replied dryly. Don't worry about me, Ripley. Enjoy your day, and give my congratulations to Daisy. I hung up before he could add anything else. My heart ached, but my resolve had only grown stronger. I wasn't going to make a scene at his wedding, but I couldn't let them just cut me out. At Tabitha's house, work was already in full swing. Wendy was laying out makeup on a table, Nia was tuning her cello, and Oliver was checking out the equipment. There's our star, Tabitha exclaimed when I walked in. Ready to be a viral sensation? At my age, I'd rather be a viral sensation than a viral infection, I joked, and everyone laughed. Wendy immediately sat me in a chair and began to work her magic on my face. Her skillful hands worked wonders. My eyes became more expressive, my cheekbones, clearer, and wrinkles, almost imperceptible. You've always been beautiful, Lily, she said, putting on the finishing touches. And tonight you're going to be dazzling. The dress fit perfectly, emphasizing what was right and hiding the imperfections. When Wendy finished with my hair, an elegant updo with silver starfish woven into it, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. Oh my God, I breathed out. I look amazing, Tabitha finished for me. Ripley and Daisy are going to drop their jaws. At 3 in the afternoon, we loaded everything we needed into Martin's minivan and headed for Sunset Beach. Oliver drove ahead in his Jeep with the drone and the rest of the equipment. I could feel the nervousness building as we drove, but Tabitha held my hand tightly. It's going to be okay, Lily, she said. We're not disrupting their wedding, just having our own celebration. They might not even notice us. But you want them to notice, Martin said, looking at us in the rearview mirror. Of course I do, Tabitha admitted. Otherwise, what's the point? We arrived at the beach around 4 o'clock. Oliver was already there, studying the area through binoculars. All clear, he said. Ripley and Daisy's guests are just starting to gather in the South Cove. We've got about an hour to get everything ready. We unloaded the decorations and began setting them up on the rocky ledge that Oliver had chosen for our impromptu ceremony. The location really was perfect, high enough to be visible from afar, yet not too difficult to climb. Martin set up the portable sound system. Nia positioned herself and her cello on a small dais, and Tabitha and 2 other assistants hung fabrics that fluttered beautifully in the sea breeze. 15 minutes to go, Oliver announced, glancing at his watch. The guests were almost all assembled. The bride and groom should be arriving soon. I took a deep breath of the salty sea air. Doubts still plagued me, but it was too late to back out. I looked at the ocean, endless and majestic. Bertram loved the sea. We used to come here often with him and little Ripley. I wonder if my son remembers those days. It's time, Tabitha said quietly. Are you ready? I nodded and took my place in the center of our makeshift stage. Nia began to play, a gentle, heartfelt melody spilling over the beach. Oliver launched the drone that was supposed to be filming everything from the air, and his assistants positioned their cameras at strategic points. The ceremony began. It wasn't a script in the strict sense, but rather a choreographed improvisation. I moved slowly in my flowing dress, performing the simple but beautiful movements we had rehearsed with Tabitha. The music grew louder, more passionate. I stretched my arms out toward the ocean, spinning around, letting the fabric of the dress flutter around me. Tabitha threw flower petals into the air, which the wind picked up and carried toward the sea. The torches we had set up around the perimeter were lit, creating dramatic illumination. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed that some of Ripley and Daisy's wedding guests were beginning to turn in our direction. Our music, our performance was attracting attention. But I didn't allow myself to be distracted, fully immersed in the ritual. At the climax, I waded into the water, not deep, just ankle deep, and symbolically tossed a bouquet of sea flowers into the lapping waves. Then I turned toward the sunset, raised my arms, and Nia played a final triumphant melody. It ended as abruptly as it had begun. The music subsided, I froze in a final pose, and then slowly bowed to the ocean. It was only then that I allowed myself to look toward the South Bay. A multitude of guests stood, turning around in our direction. Even from this distance, you could see their surprised faces. And at the water's edge stood Ripley and Daisy, not yet in their wedding clothes, obviously just arriving for the final preparations. "We did it," Tabitha whispered, coming over to me. "Did you see their faces?" "I did." I couldn't help but smile. "But now we'd better leave before the real scandal starts." We quickly gathered the equipment and sets. Oliver filmed until the last moment, and then we all piled into the cars and drove away, leaving behind only crushed sand and memories for the witnesses. "That was great," Wendy said as we drove away from the beach. "Lily, you looked like a sea goddess." "Thank you." I felt strangely light, as if I'd lifted a heavy weight off my shoulders. I wondered what Ripley was thinking right now. "We'll know soon enough." Oliver pointed to his phone. "I've already started editing the video. It'll be ready by midnight and online by morning." We returned to Tabitha's house, where we celebrated the success of our adventure with glasses of champagne. Oliver sat in the corner with his laptop, stitching together footage from various cameras and the drone. Occasionally, he'd call us over to show us a particularly good moment, and we'd gasp in admiration. By 11 p.m., the video was almost done. 3 minutes of pure magic: sunset, ocean, fluttering fabrics, and me, a 74-year-old woman dancing on the edge of sea and land, as if stepping out of an ancient legend. "What are we going to call it?" Oliver asked. "We need a catchy title." "Bride of the Ocean," Nia suggested. "Too corny." Tabitha shook her head. "We need something with a twist." "When you weren't invited to your son's wedding," I said quietly. Everyone fell silent. "Perfect," Oliver finally said. Honest and hooking. I'd add the caption: 74-year-old woman throws her own ceremony and becomes the star of the day. Around midnight, the video was uploaded to the platform Oliver used for his work. He also sent it to a few of his social media contacts who could help with distribution. "Now all that's left to do is wait," he said. "But I'm sure it will get at least a few thousand views by morning." I came home tired but strangely satisfied. There was a message on the answering machine from Ripley. "Mom, what was that? Call me right away." I didn't call back. Let her enjoy her perfect wedding without her awkward mother first. Waking up the next morning, the first thing I did was reach for the phone. There were several missed calls from Ripley and one from Aunt Prue. But what really caught my attention were a dozen notifications from social media sites I didn't use much. I quickly turned on my computer and clicked on the link Oliver had sent. Our video had already gotten over 50,000 views, and the counter kept spinning. In the comments, people were expressing admiration and support. "What a woman, a real queen. Showed them all. I wish I was as cool at her age. Who is this legend? I want her autograph." The phone rang again. This time it was Tabitha. "Lily!" She screamed into the phone. "Did you see that? We're viral. We were on the morning news." Oliver called. He's shocked. "The video's gone viral." I couldn't believe my ears. What was supposed to be a little revenge has turned into an internet phenomenon. "What about Ripley's wedding?" I asked. "Is there any news?" "Oh," Tabitha hummed. "As far as I know, the ceremony went according to plan. But you know what? There are hardly any pictures of their wedding on social media. But our video is everywhere, captioned 'Same time on the same beach.'" I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. My little show of independence overshadowed my son's wedding, which was supposed to be perfect without me. What would happen now? Ripley would never forgive me. Daisy will probably declare war. But strangely, it didn't bother me. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive. The phone rang again. This time the number was unfamiliar. Hello? I answered cautiously. Mrs. Shanestone? It was a young, energetic voice. This is Jaden Reeves from the Livingston Daily. We'd like to interview you about your viral video. The next 24 hours were a whirlwind. My phone was ringing off the hook. Journalists, bloggers, random people from social networks. Everyone wanted to talk to the Sea Bride, as I was dubbed on the internet. The video garnered over 1 million views in 24 hours, an absolute record for our provincial Livingston. I sat at my computer most of the morning looking at the comments under the video. Most of them were amazingly positive. That's real fortitude. Bravo, ladies. Someone give this woman a medal for style and elegance. At 74 to look that way and move that way? I want her secret. There were criticisms, of course. Isn't it a little too dramatic for family conflict? Poor son, what kind of mother is that? But the negativity was drowned in a sea of support and admiration. People who didn't know me at all were taking my side in this strange family drama. Around noon, Tabitha called. She was euphoric. Lily, have you seen the latest news? She asked without preamble. What kind of news? There's so much I can't keep up. Lillian, she said, her voice full of glee, you've overshadowed your son's wedding. There's hardly any mention of Ripley and Daisy's ceremony on local social media, but your video is everywhere. Even the city news showed it on the morning news. I didn't know whether to be happy or sad about it. On the one hand, my little performance had achieved its purpose. I'd shown Ripley and especially Daisy that I wasn't to be taken lightly. On the other hand, I didn't want to completely ruin my son's wedding. After all, despite our differences, I loved him. Tabitha, I'm not sure this is a good thing, I said. I wanted to make a statement, but not to make my son a disaster. Come on, Lily, exclaimed her friend. You didn't ruin the ceremony for them. They did it as planned, exchanged vows, received congratulations. You were just the big news of the day. And by the way, it's entirely their fault. If they'd invited you, none of this would have happened. There was some truth in what she said, but it still made me feel uneasy. I put my phone away and decided to go for a walk. Fresh air always helped me think. I put on a light coat. The day was cool. I went outside and headed for a small park nearby. No sooner had I reached the corner than I heard, "Look, it's her, the bride of the sea." When I turned around, I saw two young women pointing at me and smiling. They looked to be about Daisy's age. "Excuse me." One of them stepped closer. "Aren't you the lady from the viral video? Can I take a picture with you?" I was confused. During my 32 years of television work, I had gotten used to being recognized on the streets. But after I retired, that part of my life was a thing of the past. And now, at 74, I was a local celebrity again. Sure, I agreed, not knowing what else to say. The girls stood on either side of me, smiling broadly, and took a few selfies. "You're amazing," one of them said. "My grandmother could never do that. She thinks that at her age, you should only babysit grandchildren and make jam." "Everyone chooses their own path," I replied diplomatically. "And jam is wonderful." They laughed and, thanking me, went on, actively typing something into their phones. I had no doubt that in a few minutes our photos would end up on social networks with some enthusiastic caption. I was recognized in the park, too. An elderly couple on a bench nodded approvingly as I passed by, and a young mom with a stroller even came over to say that I had inspired her. "You showed that age is just a number," she said. "I'm going to save your video to show when I get old myself." When I returned home, I found that the number of messages on my answering machine had exceeded its memory. Among the many unfamiliar names and numbers was one I recognized immediately: Aunt Prue. I dialed her number, preparing myself for a flood of enthusiastic exclamations. Aunt Prue did not disappoint. "Lillian," she shouted into the phone, "you've made a splash. You're the talk of the town." "Hi, Aunt Prue. How was the wedding?" Oh, the ceremony was beautiful, to say the least. Daisy looked stunning in her dress, and Ripley was so happy. But you know what? As soon as we sat down at the tables in the restaurant, everyone was talking about you. Even Daisy's parents were asking who the amazing woman on the rock was. I couldn't help but smile. I can only imagine how much it pissed Daisy off. And how did she react? "Oh," Aunt Prue lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. She was furious, tried to pretend it wasn't happening, but I could see her clenching her fists under the table. And when one of the guests showed her the video right during the cake, she almost broke a glass. I felt a prick of conscience. Daisy certainly wasn't my favorite, but it was her day after all. "And Ripley?" I asked cautiously. "He was confused," Aunt Prue answered after a pause. "At first, he tried to ignore talking about you, but then I heard him say to someone, 'That's my mother's whole thing, always doing things her own way.' And you know, Lillian, there was something like pride in his voice. It surprised me. Wasn't Ripley angry?" Aunt Prue, as if reading my thoughts, continued, "I don't think he's really angry with you, Lily. It's more like he's confused. Daisy's a different matter. She was furious, especially when she found out that your video was gaining views faster than their wedding photos." "Have their photos been posted yet?" "Yeah, the photographer did a quick compilation last night. They're beautiful, I'll give you that. But they're kind of, ordinary. Just another beach wedding. Your performance was something special." I thanked Aunt Prue for the information and promised to meet her for a cup of tea in the next few days. After the conversation, I felt a little better. At least Ripley didn't seem to be so upset. However, my relief didn't last long. Around 3 in the afternoon, the phone rang and my son's name popped up on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hi, Ripley." "Mom." His voice sounded strained. "We need to talk." "Of course, darling. How was the wedding?" He ignored my question. "What was that yesterday? Why did you make that, this spectacle?" "It wasn't an act, Ripley. It was my own celebration," I replied calmly. "You didn't want me at your wedding, so I decided to have my own ceremony. I didn't interfere with yours." "You didn't?" There was a note of indignation in his voice. "Mom, you were all the guests talked about." Daisy was in tears. "I'm sorry if I upset Daisy," I said, trying to sound sincere. "But Ripley, you created this situation. How do you think it felt for me to find out that my own son didn't want me at his wedding?" He sighed. I tried to explain that I was awkward, that I might say the wrong thing to important guests. I interrupted. "Ripley, I'm your mother. The only one, by the way. Your father would be disappointed." There was a long pause. "Daisy wants you to delete that video," he said at last. "It's ruining the memory of our wedding." "I'm afraid that's impossible," I replied. "First of all, Oliver shot and edited the video, and it was his copyright. Second, it's already gone viral, copied and re-uploaded to various platforms." "Mom, do you realize what you've done?" There was desperation in his voice. "Daisy's parents have invested tons of money in this wedding, and all anyone is talking about is you and your— What was that all about? A dance? A ritual? An ocean wedding?" I answered. "An ancient symbolic ritual of the coastal peoples." "Oh my God," Ripley moaned. "Did you make all this up on purpose, just to spite us?" I paused, searching for words. "No, Ripley, I did it to remind myself and you that I still exist, that I can't just be pushed aside because I don't fit in with your plans. Daisy's furious, he said after a pause. She thinks you did it on purpose to ruin our day. What do you think, Ripley? I asked softly. Yeah, he stammered. I don't know. Part of me is angry that you put on such a show. But the other part, another part of me understands why you did it. And to be honest, the video is impressive. You look amazing. That confession touched me to the core. Thank you, darling. And congratulations again on your marriage. I really wish you and Daisy every happiness. Thank you, Mom. His voice softened. But I don't think Daisy will forgive you soon. I'll get over it, I replied dryly. After talking to Ripley, I felt strangely relieved. At least there wasn't a complete breakdown between us. Maybe our relationship would even improve in time. Unless, of course, Daisy turned him against me too much. The rest of the day passed in a hectic pace. I gave a short phone interview to the local paper, turned down several TV stations that wanted to do a story, and finally turned off the phone to get some rest from the constant calls. In the evening, Tabitha dropped by with a bottle of champagne. "We need to celebrate your triumph," she said from the doorway. "What triumph?" I let her in. "That I became an internet meme at 74? Exactly. She went into the kitchen and started looking for glasses. "Do you know how many views our video has now? Almost 2 million. And that's not counting reposts and copies on other platforms." I shook my head, not knowing whether to be proud or horrified. "Oliver's gotten several offers from major media companies," Tabitha continued, pouring champagne. "They're thrilled with his work with the drone, and Nia, our cellist, has already received several invitations to perform. Everyone wants the music from the viral video. At least someone benefited from it," I smiled. "Don't be pompous." Tabitha handed me a glass. "You've been inundated with offers, too. I've seen your email account. There are more than 100 letters. Mostly from journalists. Not only that," she squinted slyly, "there are some very interesting ones. For example, from a local internet platform that wants you to host a blog or a show." I laughed. "At my age, what am I supposed to blog about? How to properly knit socks?" "Lily, you've become a symbol of age activism," Tabitha exclaimed. "A woman who didn't let circumstances and age dictate how she lived her life. That's inspiring to people." We were drinking champagne and chatting when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting visitors, especially this late. On the doorstep stood Uncle Hunter, Bertram's brother. He'd been at Ripley's wedding. I'd seen a glimpse of him in the background of some of the photos I'd had time to look through. "Hunter, what are you doing here?" "Hi, Lillian," he smiled. "I thought I'd stop by before I left. My plane doesn't leave until tomorrow morning." I invited him in, introduced him to Tabitha, and we all moved into the living room together. "Lovely champagne," Hunter approved, taking a sip from the glass. "To the bride of the ocean." We clinked glasses, and I looked at my brother-in-law carefully. "So you saw the video?" "The whole world has seen it, Lily," he laughed. "And I have to say, you look amazing. Bertram would be proud." "I doubt it," I sighed. "I ruined his son's wedding." "Nonsense," Hunter dismissed me. "The wedding went as planned. It's just that you added alternative entertainment." Tabitha smiled victoriously, as if to say, "I told you so." "How's Ripley?" I asked. "He called me, but I'm not sure he was sincere." "Confused," Hunter answered honestly. "But not angry, as you might think. More like surprised. He never expected you to come up with such a creative response." "And Daisy?" "Oh, she's pissed." He didn't hide it. "But you know what? A lot of the guests think it's her fault. Who doesn't invite the groom's mother to a wedding? It's just unseemly." We talked late into the night. Hunter told me that a lot of relatives were secretly admiring what I'd done. Even Aunt Beatrice, who liked to drink and sing, said I had shown those snobs what real class is. When Hunter and Tabitha finally left, I sat in my chair for a long time, pondering the implications of my impulsive action. I hadn't planned on becoming an internet sensation. I didn't want to overshadow Ripley's wedding. I just wanted to show that I wasn't to be treated like an inconvenient piece of furniture being pushed into a corner. The next morning, I was woken up by a call from an unfamiliar number. I don't usually answer these calls, but something told me to pick up the phone. Hello? Mrs. Shanestone? There was a pleasant woman's voice. My name is Veronica Bird. I'm the editor of the Silver Generation online platform. We would be very interested in cooperating with you. Veronica Bird, I repeated, trying to concentrate. The morning was hazy, and so were my thoughts after a sleepless night. The Silver Generation? I've never heard of you. We're a fairly new platform, the woman explained. Focused on the 55-plus audience, we create content that's really interesting to older people, not just ads for drugs and cardigans. I smiled involuntarily. The last thing I wanted to do was advertise cardigans. What does that have to do with me? I asked, even though I had already guessed. Your viral video has shown everyone that age is no barrier to vibrant action and self-expression. We would like to offer you to host your own show on our platform. The format is at your discretion. Interviews, monologues, discussions. The main thing is your authenticity and the spirit of independence that you've demonstrated. I sat on the bed, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. Ms. Bird, do you realize I'm 74 years old? I don't know anything about social media or modern technology. That's the beauty of it, she said with enthusiasm. You're going to talk about what's important to your generation, without the technical stuff. We will provide a team to handle the technical side. All we need from you is ideas and charisma, and judging by the video, you're good with the latter. I asked for time to think about it, and Veronica readily agreed, leaving her contacts. After hanging up the phone, I looked out the window at the waking city for a long time. It was an interesting offer, but was I ready for such a twist in my routine? After a shower and a cup of strong coffee, I felt better and decided to call Tabitha. Who better than her to give me sound advice? Sure, go for it, my friend exclaimed before I finished. Lily, this is a chance to be the center of attention again, to do what you do best, talk to people. I don't think it's a good idea to start a new career at my age, I said. Besides, what can I tell an audience? Oh, please, Tabitha snorted. 32 years in television, a journalism degree, a sharp mind and tongue. You can talk about anything. About modern technology through an older man's eyes, about how the world is changing, about family conflicts finally. The mention of family conflicts made me cringe. I'm not sure I want to bring my personal problems into the public eye. You don't have to be specific about your situation. Tabitha softened her tone. But you could talk about intergenerational relationships in general. It's a topic that's relevant to a lot of people. She had a point. In my years of working in television, I've learned that the most personal, painful topics often resonate most with audiences. People want to know that they are not alone in their problems. Okay, I'll think about it, I said. But first, I want to meet this Veronica in person and learn more about her platform. The meeting was set for the next day at the small Silver Generation office in downtown Livingston. I wore my best pantsuit, a navy blue one with a silver brooch on the lapel. Bertram always said it made me look like a real boss. The office was modern and bright. I was greeted by Veronica, an energetic woman of about 45, with a short haircut and intelligent eyes. Mrs. Shinestone, she shook my hand firmly. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. Come on in and I'll show you our studio. The studio was small but well equipped. 2 comfortable chairs, professional lighting, cameras, everything you need for quality filming. We present your program as a weekly show, Veronica explained as we drank tea in her office. The episodes are 20 to 30 minutes long. You can choose your own topics, but we're ready to help with ideas and research. And the audience? I asked. Are you sure anyone will be interested in listening to an old woman? I'm more than sure, Veronica smiled. After your video, we conducted a small survey among our audience. 92% expressed interest in a show featuring you. People want to hear your thoughts, your experiences. I mulled over the proposal all the way home. On the one hand, it seemed crazy to start a new project at my age. On the other hand, what do I have to lose? My life has become too sedate since retirement. Perhaps this was exactly what I needed, a new challenge, a new goal. There was a surprise waiting for me at home. There was a letter in the mailbox, a real paper letter, which is rare nowadays. The sender was my sister Yvette. We hadn't spoken in years, not because of a fight, just because life had divorced us. She'd moved to another state after her husband died, and our contact had faded. I made myself some tea and settled into my favorite chair to read the letter. Dear Lillian, I hope this letter finds you in good health. I saw your video. I think the whole internet saw it. I can't tell you how proud I am of you. You have always been strong, but this act showed your true colors. I know about the situation with Ripley and his fiancée. He called me a few weeks ago, asking for advice. I have to admit, I didn't tell him what I really thought. I was afraid of arousing his disapproval, of ruining our already fragile relationship. Instead, I mumbled something evasive about both sides needing to show understanding. Looking at your bravery now, I realize I should have taken your side, telling him that you can't do that to your mother. That family is the most precious thing we have, especially at our age. I'm sorry, sister. I've always admired your ability to tell the truth without fear of repercussion. You were that way on television, that way in your personal life. I've always preferred to avoid conflict, even at the cost of my own honesty. Maybe it's not too late to change. What you did inspired me. Maybe at 72, I'll finally learn to stand up for what I believe in. I'd like to come visit you, if you don't mind. We've been apart too long, and life is too short for such distances between loved ones. Love, your sister Yvette. I reread the letter twice, feeling tears come to my eyes. Yvette had always been softer than me, kinder. As a child, I had protected her from bullies. As a young girl, from overly persistent suitors. She chose the quiet life of a housewife. I, a stormy career as a TV journalist. But despite the difference in character, we were always close. The fact that she admitted her wrong and expressed a desire to restore our relationship touched me to the core. I immediately wrote her a reply, inviting her to come at any convenient time. After sending the letter, I went back to thinking about Veronica's proposal. Could it really be a chance not only for me, but for others my age? A chance to show that life doesn't end with retirement, that our voice still matters. That evening, I called Veronica and agreed. We agreed to start with a trial run in a week so that I would have time to prepare and think about the format. It will be great, she assured me. You have a lot of experience in the media, which will give a head start to many modern bloggers. After the conversation, I felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. Did I make the right decision? Would I make a fool of myself? But then I remembered Yvette's letter and my performance on the beach. If I could be a sea bride at 74, I could host an internet show. The next morning, I woke up to Tabitha calling me. Lily, turn on the TV. Channel 6. I hurried into the living room and turned on the TV. The morning program was on, and the host was saying, Internet sensation Lillian Shanestone, who proved that age is no reason to give up a vibrant life. According to our information, Mrs. Shinestone has received an offer to host her own show for an older audience. How did they find out? I marveled into the phone. News travels fast, Tabitha answered. especially good news. During the day, I received several more calls from journalists asking for interviews. I turned them all down, deciding to deal with the new project first. In the evening, however, there was a call I couldn't ignore. From Ripley. "Mom," he began without preamble, "is it true? Are you going to host the show?" "Hello, Ripley," I replied calmly. "Yes, it's true. I've had an interesting offer and I thought I'd give it a go." "But why?" I could hear the genuine incomprehension in his voice. "You're—" He hesitated. "74?" I prompted. "Yes, Ripley, I'm 74, and I'm still capable of new beginnings." He paused. "That's not what I mean. It's just that you always said you were glad to retire, to take a break from cameras and studios. That was before my son decided that I was too awkward for his wedding." I couldn't help but quip. "You know, Ripley, sometimes a man needs a reminder that he still means something in this world." He sighed. "Mom, we've had this discussion before. I'm sorry about the way things turned out." "I know, honey." I softened. "And I don't hold it against you. This decision isn't just about you or your wedding. It's about my life, about what I want to do." "And you really want to be in the public eye again?" I could hear the doubt in his voice. "Yes," I answered firmly. "I've worked in television journalism for 32 years. It's what I know how to do. It's what I enjoy doing. And if now is the opportunity to return to it, albeit in a new format, why not?" After a pause, he suddenly said, "I'm proud of you, Mom." The words caught me off guard. When was the last time Ripley had said he was proud of me? I think it was before Daisy came into his life. "Thank you, darling," I replied, trying to hide the excitement in my voice. It meant a lot to me. After our conversation, I sat in the dark for a long time, thinking about how strange life had gotten. My conflict with my son and his fiancée, which had seemed so devastating, had brought about an unexpected turn in my life, perhaps for the better. The next day, I began preparing for the first episode of the show. I decided to start with the topic that was closest to my heart: age and self-actualization. It's never too late to start. I wrote down my thoughts, recalled stories from my journalistic practice, and planned the structure of the issue. In the evening, I called Yvette to share the news. Her excitement was genuine and contagious. "Lily, this is wonderful," she exclaimed. "You were always a born presenter. People listen to you with their mouths open." "Don't exaggerate," I laughed. "But thank you for your support. When do you plan to come?" "In 2 weeks, if it's convenient for you," Yvette answered. "I've already booked the tickets." The prospect of seeing my sister made me feel more excited. Perhaps this new stage in my life would not only help me, but also repair the broken family ties. On the day of my first shoot, I was as nervous as a rookie, even though I had decades of experience under my belt. Veronica met me at the studio, helped me with my makeup and final preparations. "Just be yourself," she advised. "People have fallen in love with you for your authenticity. Don't try to copy anyone or fit in with current trends." I nodded, realizing she was right. My strength is not in trying to appear younger or cooler, but in my life experience, wisdom, and ability to speak plainly. The shoot went surprisingly easy. As soon as the red light of the camera came on, all my fears disappeared. I talked about the importance of not letting age limit you, my experiences in television, and my recent performance art, without going into personal details. Told a few stories of people who found their calling at an older age, and ended with a call to never be afraid to start something new. "Brilliant!" Veronica exclaimed when we were done. "Exactly what our audience needed. Inspiring, but not sentimental." That evening, back home, I reread Yvette's letter again. Her words about toxic relationships made me think. How many families are destroyed because of the inability to speak honestly with each other? Because of fear of conflict, because of a desire to keep the peace at all costs? My sister was afraid to speak her true mind to Ripley. I myself put up with Daisy's neglect for years so as not to make life difficult for my son. We all contribute to this toxicity by thinking we are doing the right thing. Maybe this will be a topic for one of my future issues. Toxic family relationships. How to recognize and change. I started jotting down ideas, feeling inspiration growing inside. Before going to bed, I took a long look at the picture of Bertram on my bedside table. "What do you think of this, darling?" I asked aloud. "Your old wife is going public again." I thought he was smiling a little wider than usual from the photograph. Bertram has always supported my endeavors, even the craziest ones. If he were alive, he would be the first to applaud my performance on the beach and my decision to start a new career online. As I fell asleep, I thought about how strangely life works. Sometimes the most painful events lead to unexpected opportunities. 6 months flew by like a blink of an eye. Who would have thought that at 74, I would find a new calling that would bring me so much joy and fulfillment? My show on the Silver Generation platform suddenly became popular, not only with my target audience of seniors, but also with the youth. They called me the cool grandma who speaks the truth. Today, we filmed the 26th episode of the program, which was now called No Filters with Lillian. The topic was close to my heart. Age and relationships, why it's never too late to find love. "And remember," I said, looking directly into the camera, "wrinkles on your face say nothing about your heart's ability to love and be loved. Thank you for being with me. See you next week." "Cut," announced Veronica, who was now producing my show. "Lillian, you were great, as always." I smiled as I took off the microphone. Over the months, I had gotten used to the filming process, and the initial nervousness was gone. I was now genuinely enjoying every episode. "Do you need a ride home?" Veronica asked, gathering her things. "No thanks. Hugh's picking me up." Hugh Patterson. Another unexpected change in my life. We'd known each other for years. He was a cameraman at the TV station where I worked, but on a different program. We occasionally crossed paths at corporate events, said hello in the hallways, but nothing more. He retired 5 years ahead of me and moved to suburban Livingston. After my video went viral, Hugh wrote to me on social media. "Always knew you were special, Lillian. Glad to see the years haven't extinguished your fire." We started texting, then met for coffee, and for 3 months we spent most of our free time together. Hugh was a widower, as I was a widow. His wife had died of cancer 5 years earlier. He had a grown daughter who lived in another state and 2 grandchildren of whom he was very proud. He was nothing like Bertram in looks or personality, but he was easy and relaxed to be with. He understood my independence and didn't try to limit it. "Ready?" Hugh looked into the studio, waving to Veronica. I parked at the entrance. "Yes, I'm coming." I grabbed my bag and threw on a light coat. April in Livingston was unpredictable. We walked outside, and Hugh gallantly opened his car door for me. "How was the filming?" he asked as we pulled into the driveway. "It was fine. We talked about love and old age." I looked at him meaningfully. "I hope you mentioned how great I was?" He winked at me. Of course I did. I told him I'd met an amazing man who could cook the most delicious dinner in the world. I laughed. Cooking was Hugh's passion. He'd taken a few courses since his retirement, and now he was spoiling me with gourmet meals. In return, I shared with him my experiences in television, stories about the celebrities I interviewed, stories about Livingston's life that you wouldn't find in the official chronicles. "By the way, Ripley called you," Hugh said, turning into my street. "I was at your place when the house phone rang. I'm sorry I answered, but you asked me to make myself at home." "It's okay," I shrugged. "What did he want?" "He said it was urgent and asked you to call back as soon as possible. Ripley, We'd barely spoken since the day my viral video came out. He called a few times in the first month, mostly to express his displeasure with Daisy and her parents. Then he congratulated me on the launch of the show, but the conversation was strained. From then on, we only exchanged formal messages for the holidays. I knew from Aunt Prue that things weren't going well with Daisy. After their honeymoon, she insisted on buying an expensive house they could barely afford. Ripley had to take a second job to cope with the mortgage. Daisy had spent her money on designer clothes and furniture, as if she was trying to live up to the image of the successful couple in the glossy magazines. I'll call him later, I decided. I wanted to get some rest first. At home, Hugh made us dinner. Seafood pasta, my favorite dish. We ate, discussing plans for the weekend. Yvette was due to come to Livingston for a few days, and we wanted to have a little celebration, the anniversary of my viral debut. I can't believe it's been 6 months already. I shook my head, sipping my wine. It seems like it was yesterday. 6 months that changed your life. Hugh raised his glass. To new beginnings. We clinked glasses, and I thought about how much had happened in that time. My show was gaining momentum. I'd made new friends. I'd rebuilt my relationship with Yvette, who now came to visit me regularly. And of course, I met Hugh, who brought a warmth and comfort to my life that had been sorely lacking since Bertram's death. After dinner, I decided to call Ripley back. What could be so urgent? Mom? He answered after the first ring, as if he'd been waiting by the phone. At last. I've called you several times. Hello, Ripley. I settled back in my chair. Hugh had tactfully retreated to the kitchen to give me a chance to talk in private. Hugh said you called. Is something wrong? Yeah, you could say that. His voice sounded strained. I've got... Daisy and I are having a little financial difficulty. Yeah, that's what it is. What kind of difficulties? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. The mortgage, he sighed. The interest rate went up, and my second job. Anyway, I got laid off last week. We're barely making ends meet. I'm sorry, I said sincerely. Are you looking for another job? Yes, but no luck so far, he said quietly. Mom, I know you have some savings that Dad left behind. I closed my eyes. So it was money. Not concern for my health, not a desire to repair the relationship, but money. Ripley, I began cautiously, your father did leave us some good savings, but most of it went to selling the old house, buying my apartment, and providing for my old age. I understand, he said quickly. I'm not asking for much, just a small loan to get me through a couple months until I find a new job. I sighed. I had money, it was true, especially now that my show was making a steady income. But it wasn't about the money. Does Daisy know you're calling me with this request? I asked. Well, not exactly, he stammered. I wanted to see if it was possible first. I see. I shook my head, though he couldn't see it. Ripley, why haven't you called me in 6 months for nothing? Ask how I was doing. Tell me about myself. The silence on the other end of the line was more eloquent than any words. I've been busy, he said at last. Work, home, Daisy. Of course, I didn't argue. You know, son, I have a counter-proposal. Let's meet on neutral territory. For example, at Martha's Cafe. We'll talk about everything. About your work, about my show, about how our lives have changed over the months. And then we'll decide how I can help you. He hesitated. I could almost see him mentally weighing whether it was worth the time to talk if I could just get the money. Okay, he agreed reluctantly. When? Sunday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? I suggested. Yvette's coming on Saturday. Maybe she'd like to join us. You haven't seen your aunt in a while. Yvette? He was surprised. Are you two in touch again? Yes, for a few months now. She comes to visit me regularly. I didn't know, he said, something like jealousy or resentment in his voice. How would you know, Ripley? We haven't had a real conversation since your wedding. After a pause, he agreed to a meeting on Sunday and quickly said goodbye. I hung up the phone with a heavy heart. Hugh appeared from the kitchen with 2 cups of tea. Is everything all right? He asked, placing 1 cup next to me. Ripley needs money. I rubbed the bridge of my nose tiredly. Mortgage and job problems. So, what did you do? I suggested we meet and talk. I took the cup. You know, Hugh, money isn't the problem. I can help him, and I will. But it bothers me that he only came to me when he needed something. I understand. Hugh sat down next to me. Do you want me to go with you to this meeting? No, thanks. It's something I have to do on my own. Besides, Yvette will be there. I smiled at him. But you can make us a special dinner for Sunday night. Something comforting in case the meeting doesn't go well. Will do? He kissed me lightly on the cheek. Yvette arrived Saturday morning, refreshed and rejuvenated. It was as if she had shed the weight of her years over the months. She and I had become much closer than we had been before our long separation. She followed every episode of my show, calling after every premiere to discuss the topic. It's so good to see you, sis. She gave me a big hug on the doorstep. You have a beautiful complexion. Is it all Hugh? Not only, I laughed. Regular shoots, new acquaintances, interesting projects. I feel more alive than I have in all the years since I retired. I told her about Ripley's call and our upcoming meeting. Yvette frowned. He hasn't changed, she sighed, always thinking of himself. And that Daisy? I've seen a few of her posts on social media. She still pretends they have the perfect life. Pictures of expensive food, new clothes, their house, but not a word about you or your success. Not surprising, I shrugged. I'm a reminder of her failure. The wedding was supposed to be her triumph, but instead everyone only remembered me. The meeting at Martha's Cafe on Sunday started off tensely. Ripley came alone, without Daisy. As he explained, she was busy with chores. He looked drained and tired. The suit that had fit him perfectly before now seemed too loose. Ripley, Yvette put her arms around him. You've lost weight. Is everything all right? Just a lot of work, Aunt Yvette. He smiled awkwardly. You look good, and so do you, Mom. We ordered and the conversation flowed more freely. Ripley told me about his situation. He'd lost his second job because of redundancy, and his main job had problems with his boss, the one I'd once told off at his birthday party. Daisy worked in a clothing boutique, but her salary was barely enough to cover her own expenses. How's your show, Mom? He asked, trying to feign interest. I've seen a few episodes. It looks professional. Thanks, I nodded. It's gaining popularity. We already have over 100,000 subscribers, and that number is growing every week. And we have sponsors, Yvette added proudly. Lillian is now promoting a line of cosmetics for mature skin. A very lucrative contract, by the way. I saw Ripley's eyes light up at the mention of money. Really? He stepped forward. That's wonderful, Mom. I always knew you were talented. You never told me that before, I remarked, sipping my tea. But thank you. We continued talking, carefully avoiding the subject of money until Yvette excused herself and went into the ladies' room. As soon as she was out of sight, Ripley leaned over to me. Mom, I'm glad you're doing well, but what about my request? He lowered his voice. I really need some help. We could lose the house. I looked at my son carefully. He looked genuinely concerned, but there was something else in his eyes. Calculation? I remembered how he used to look at me the same way when he asked for a new toy as a child or money for a concert as a teenager. Ripley, I put my hand on his wrist. I'll help you, but on one condition. What's that? He tensed up. You have to come to the taping of my show as a guest. We'll talk about intergenerational relationships, about misunderstandings, about the importance of valuing family. His face got all stretched out. Mom, you can't be serious. I can't go on the internet like this. What will my coworkers say? What will Daisy think? What would she think about you asking me for money? I countered. You haven't told her, have you? He averted his eyes. That's different. I just want to protect her from stress. No, Ripley. I shook my head. You want to protect her pride. She wants nothing to do with me, even if it means financial problems for both of you. Yvette returned and the conversation became general again. We discussed the weather, local news, mutual acquaintances, but I could see that Ripley's thoughts were far away. He was considering my offer, weighing his dignity against financial gain. As we said goodbye at the door of the cafe, he finally made up his mind. I can't, Mom, he said quietly. I appreciate your offer of help, but not at this price. Daisy will never forgive me if I appear on your show after everything that's happened. I understand, I nodded. The door's always open, Ripley. Not for money, but for a real relationship. When you're ready. Yvette and I watched him walk away, slouching more than usual. He chose her, Yvette said, putting her arm around my shoulders. Again. Yes, I sighed. But it's his choice, and I have to respect it, even if I think he's wrong. That evening, we gathered at my house to celebrate 6 months since my viral debut. Tabitha came, Oliver and his wife, Wendy, Naya, Veronica, and of course Hugh, who had prepared a real feast. We sat in my small living room converted for hosting, drank champagne, and reminisced about that crazy day at Sunset Beach. You know what the most amazing thing is? I said, looking at my friends. At the time, I thought I was losing my family, and I actually found a new one. To a new family, Tabitha raised her glass. To those who accept us for who we are. We clinked glasses, and I felt my eyes fill with tears, not of bitterness, but of gratitude. Yes, Ripley had chosen his path, and it had taken him away from me. But there were other people in my life who valued me for the very things that made me. For my directness, for my independence, for my unwillingness to conform to anyone else's expectations. Hugh came over and asked quietly, Are you all right? Are you thinking about Ripley? A little, I admitted. But more, I'm thinking about how strange life is. 6 months ago, I was sitting at home alone, feeling unwanted and forgotten. And today, my living room is full of friends. I have a successful show. My sister is back. And I looked him in the eye. And there's you. And I'm not going anywhere. He squeezed my hand. I promise. The evening went on. We watched tapes of my show, laughed at the funny moments behind the scenes, and discussed plans for the future. Oliver suggested making a documentary about older people starting new careers late in life, with me as the host. Veronica talked about possibly expanding the platform and launching new programs. As the guests began to disperse, I went out to the balcony to get some fresh air. Yvette joined me, and we stood looking out over Livingston at night. You know, Lily, she said, I've always envied your courage. You were never afraid to be yourself, even if it meant going against the tide. I so regret wasting so many years trying to please everyone around me. It's never too late to change, I hugged my sister. You've proven that in the last 6 months. We both have, she smiled. Who would have thought that at our age we would be starting a new chapter in our lives? When everyone had gone and Hugh and I were alone, I pulled out an old photo album. There were pictures of Bertram, of little Ripley, of our family trips to Sunset Beach. Do you miss them? Hugh asked, looking at the pictures. Back then, yes, I answered honestly. Bertram every day. Ripley. The Ripley he was before Daisy, before his quest for the perfect life. But you know what? I can't live in the past, especially now that the present is proving to be so interesting. I closed the album and put it back on the shelf. So, what's next? Lillian Shanestone. Hugh put his arm around my shoulders. What are your plans for the next 6 months? To keep the show going, I thought. Maybe take Oliver up on his offer for a documentary. Spend more time with you. Learn to cook something other than scrambled eggs. Ambitious plans, he laughed. You know what the most important thing is? I turned to him. To keep being yourself, not to compromise just to make someone else comfortable, not pretending to be less than I am just so someone won't feel uncomfortable. Life is too short for that, even at 74. Hugh kissed me, and I thought about the quirks of fate. If Ripley and Daisy hadn't decided 6 months ago that I was too awkward for their wedding, I would never have been on that beach with Tabitha and the others. Never would have become a viral sensation. Never would have gotten an offer to host the show. Never would have reunited with Yvette. Wouldn't have met Hugh. Sometimes what seems like the end is actually a new beginning. And while I'm sad that Ripley chose a different path, I'm grateful for my own, for the fact that at 74, life doesn't end, but only opens up new possibilities. True family isn't always those you are related to by blood. Sometimes it's those people who come into your life unexpectedly, who see right through you and still stick around. The ones who accept you for who you are, with all your flaws and oddities, regardless of age, status, or past mistakes. And for that, I am grateful to my uninvited, unexpected, but so real new family.